What's up guys, Triumph here again, bringing you another video guide to the new patch. What a patch this one was, full of absolutely crazy, unexpected changes. Changes! Definitely some new stuff to get used to. Turn and face the strain. Alright, enough shenanigans, time to get serious. We've got a whole bunch of stuff to cover this week. Let's start off with something easy, Kongor's token. The token of life has been reduced to a 7-minute lifespan instead of 10 minutes. Now, this is basically just to speed up the game and to encourage a more active, more brutal gameplay really. Basically, what would happen if you get the token, your team could sit back and just farm it up, or even if you didn't like push really, if your team stepped back, right, the other team can't actually do anything because you can't push against a team that has the token of life because it's suicide. You're basically fighting 5v6 or against a free buyback. It's impossible to really fight against. So for the next 10 minutes, if your team did nothing, then the other team would be stuck doing nothing. So honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a second reduction, maybe even dropping it down to 5 minutes. Because I think what S2 are trying to do here, they're trying to say if you go, the token is for pushing. You go out, you get the token, and then you go and push the enemy base and try to destroy it. You don't go out, get the token, and then go back to farming for another 10 minutes. Pushing means fighting, fighting means action, and action means good, castable gameplay, and that's what we want to see in the game. Alright, so now let's talk about the Brutalizer. Up until now, the Brutalizer has been an absolutely terrible item. I'm sorry to break it to you, if you've been buying it up to this point, you've been screwing your team over. Sorry. So basically, what makes the Brutalizer so much more viable now is the stats that it gives. Now, by dropping down by 10 damage, but adding the extra 10 plus to each stat, the Brutalizer is doing the same amount of damage for agility heroes and 6 less damage for strength heroes, but they get the extra HP, so it about all evens out. Now, basically, the agility is giving you more attack speed and more armor. You shouldn't forget this. The HP you also get from the strength is also never to be overlooked. It's quite valuable. And overall, the item is quite cheap. So you can pick it up early game if you need to get into the fight early with your carry if the enemy team is putting a lot of pressure on your team and you can't finish farming up whatever massive hard-hitting savage mace or shield breaker that you want to farm and it's just not viable. If you just want to get into the fight quickly, then the Brutalizer is possible. Or if you're trying to play a more semi-carry melee agility hero, then it's just generally just a more viable pickup. It just allows you to get into the fight a little bit earlier than trying to farm up a massive hard-hitting item. It might not be competitively viable yet, but it's definitely pub viable. At the very least, it's no longer the item you see on Scout and go, holy shit, and cut your wrists. Provided you didn't already slash your wrists after getting Scout on the team. Alright, so we'll come back to the items in a little bit, but for now I want to talk about Nomad and Engineer. Alright, so let's start with Engineer. Now he's picked up Spider Mines instead of Tinker, and honestly, I'm not in love with it. I think Spider Mines are a terrible pub skill, and I don't think they're going to see much play outside of public games. However, let's try and make the best of a bad situation and see what we can do with Spider Mines. Now, I definitely don't recommend getting more than 1 point in Spider Mines because honestly, they're a really crap skill. You can't use them effectively in team fights because you've got to deploy them on your own position. You can't cast them at enemies, so they're really quite useless, especially with the cooldown attached to them. When you think about it, you're replacing a reliable and powerful keg turret combo with Spider Mines, which you can't use effectively really with anything else. So definitely, this is a bit of a 1.1 to skill, only pick up 1 level in it, maybe upgrade it a little bit later once you've maxed out your other 2 skills, but for the early game, definitely 1 skill level max. Now, the most obvious thing you can do beyond spotting runes with it, which, you know, you shouldn't actually need to do, your team should be buying wards. If your teammates aren't buying wards, you should buy wards. You're Engineer, you're not a carry, you're a support hero. So do your job, support, buy some wards. Don't use the Spider Mines to spot runes. So what can you do with it? So basically, you've got narrow gaps in the jungle that lead out into your lane. Now, obviously, if you stick the mines there and concentrate them in these little gaps, it makes a very effective gank deterrent. Even if it doesn't kill an incoming hero, it will deal a fair bit of damage to him and make him think twice about following through with the attack. And shout out to my good friend Aurora, this was his idea. You use them as a farming tool for your carry to aid in killing jungle stacks. So basically you stack creep camp every minute in the jungle. So in 3 minutes you can triple stack a creep camp, a hard creep camp. In 3 minutes you can drop down 6 remote mines, which would deal a fair chunk of damage to the creep stack. Even though Dark Lady doesn't get all the creeps here, she does get the ones that count. She walks away with 220 gold plus an extra level. Now that's quite cost efficient just for your support hero, just running into the jungle every 30 seconds and stacking or laying a spider mine. Now this really only works in the top lane though, because the hard camp is quite close to the lane. It works for either the Legion or the Hellborn in the top lane. However, the bottom lane for the Legion and the Hellborn, the creep camps are too far away, and the only available ones that are close by, even remotely close, are the medium camps, which really aren't worth that much money. It should also be noted that invisible heroes will trigger spider mines. Alright, so let's talk about Nomad. The main thing to know about Nomad is his ultimate spell. These other skills are fairly self-explanatory, but his ultimate skill, and whether or not it's well-timed and well-used by a player, is what really makes or breaks him in fights. Now, his ultimate has the potential to completely nullify an enemy spell, plus reflect a massive amount of AoE damage at the enemy team, plus also inflict a crippling AoE stun on possibly the entire team, depending how he lines it up. One of the main things you don't want to do against Nomad is to line yourselves up and cluster up. That will allow him to unleash an absolutely crippling ultimate. So make sure you're careful about hero placement during fights as a team. The other thing you don't want to do against Nomad is to use spells like Scout's Ultimate, the Marksman Shot, which telegraph your intention to do damage. It's really easy to counter them and really easy to set up some really nasty stuns on the enemy teams. What Scout should have done is try to play some mind games, use his ult and then quickly cancel it when he sees a Nomad try to use his counter. When he sees that counter come out, he immediately just cancels his ult, and he's made Nomad waste his ult. He might not have got his ult off, but he made Nomad waste his ult, which makes it easier for his teammates to run down Nomad. At the very least, he doesn't cause a massive freaking stun on his team. We see here a couple of times Scout tries to use his Marksman Shot, and each time he completely bones his team over. Alright, so what can you do against Nomad's ultimate skill? Obviously it's a very powerful skill, so how do you avoid it? Firstly, Magic Immunity is the best way to avoid it. Neither the damage or stun from the ultimate skill will go through Magic Immunity. Also, AoE damage over time spells won't affect the ult either, won't trigger a reaction from it. So things like Engineer's ultimate spell won't trigger the counter edge, or the edge counter from Nomad. However, single target DOT spells such as Glacier's Ice Imprisonment will get you a face full of sand. However, non-targeted bouncing DOTs such as Hellbringer's Death Balls will avoid edge counter and won't proc anything from it. Also, other bouncing spells such as Plague Rider's Plague Carrier will bounce between Nomad and other targets without cancelling the ultimate as long as you don't target Nomad specifically. His edge counter will block the first instance that he gets hit by and also reflect a massive wave of damage at Plague Rider. However, it will continue to bounce back and forth between him and another hero. It should also be noted that non-targeted AoE damage spells such as Pyromancer's Dragonfire, while they won't be nullified by edge counter, they will be reflected by edge counter and will cause a massive wave of sanity to get thrown in Pyromancer's face. Also, if a gadget procs edge counter, regardless of the direction of the source of the damage, the edge counter's Sandy Wave of Doom will actually be thrown at the owner, who may be in a completely different direction. Also, it should be noted when you're team fighting that Nomad is really irritating and really difficult to kill. He's got 2 wind walks plus an edge counter. That makes him incredibly irritating to try and kill. So when you're playing against him and you get into a team fight, unless your entire team is going to beat on him and lock him down really quickly before he can get off a good edge counter, don't go for him. Just save him for last or something. Basically, don't make the mistake of getting into a team fight and then trying to 1v1 him on your own. That's just silly. Instead, go with your teammates, find somebody else in their team, see that Glacier, see that Underfarm Witchslayer, find him and smash his face in. Don't try and go 1v1 with Nomad in the middle of the fight because he will just kite the absolute crap out of you. And you'll basically spend that entire team fight chasing shadows doing nothing. Okay, so now it's time to turn our attention back to the shop changes. Now, I'm going to try to briefly explain the reasoning behind why we've had a couple of items taken out and why we've had the recipes mucked around with. Now, I'm just going to give a brief explanation and then I'm going to point you to the link below. That's going to take you to S2 Gnome's WordPress page, and that will give you a much more in-depth, detailed explanation about why they've made these changes. But without further ado, shop changes for dummies. So basically what we've got in HoN, we've got lots of little items get transformed into lots of different big items. Now, that was the way that things were before. What's been changed now, they've taken a lot of these little items at the top, and they've changed it to this situation, which is much more pyramid-shaped, as you can see from this. Much more pyramid-shaped, where just a few little items will combine into all the normal big items. Basically, these changes allow players to adapt to different items on the fly. They can get their broadsword and then decide, okay, I don't actually want this rune axe. I can put it towards, instead, I don't know, I'm going to build a shroud. No, maybe actually I'm going to build rift shards instead. It'd be more useful in this situation. It's just like spotting a sustainer in someone's inventory. You don't know exactly what they're going to do with it. Maybe they're building a nullstone, or they could be going for a rune axe, or they could be trying to build a sacrificial stone even. Basically, you've got to apply your knowledge of what a hero is likely to build versus what lineups he's facing. As Gnome puts it in his blog, it's just another level of mind games within HoN. Anyway guys, so that's my guide for the week. Hopefully you're left with a better understanding of what's going on and a better idea of how to cope with the changes you've just been handed. If you found this video useful, like it, subscribe it, show it to your friends, show it to people who suck, maybe they'll even get a little bit better. And you can check out my YouTube channel for other stuff such as product reviews and shoutcasts for the Australian HoN scene, both in the amateur and competitive levels. If you want to request shoutcasts for your matches on the Cybergamer ladder, you can check out the link below at www.netgameradio.com. Just jump on the forums there and leave us a request. We'll see if we can get to it. Personally, I'm going to be pretty flat out this week. However, Razor's jumping on board, another shoutcaster at netGameRadio. He's jumping on board. He's getting himself set up to do video rendering as well, so he's going to help me out with the podcasting. Anyway, that's the guide for the week, guys. My name is TryForMan, and I am signing out.